She tried to destroy me, but what she didn't know was that one day, she'd be forced to live in my shadow. My name is Elena Carter. For years, I believed loyalty was unbreakable, especially when it came from someone I once called my closest friend, my sister in everything but blood, Rachel. We met in college, both ambitious, both determined to carve out our names in the competitive world of corporate marketing. Back then, it felt like fate. We studied late into the night, shared secrets no one else knew, and promised that whatever success came our way, we'd celebrate it together. But fate, as I've learned, has a cruel sense of humor. Rachel was magnetic, the kind of woman who could charm a room with nothing but a smile. I was quieter, more methodical, the strategist behind the scenes while she played the dazzling star. Together, we were unstoppable. By the time we both landed jobs at the same firm, everyone called us the power duo. I handled the groundwork, research, numbers, flawless campaigns, while she pitched the ideas and soaked up the applause. And I didn't mind. At least, not at first. But cracks began to show. The more recognition Rachel received, the less she mentioned my name. My work became her work, my ideas became her inspiration. I told myself it didn't matter, that real talent would always shine through eventually. Still, something gnawed at me every time she stood on stage, accepting awards that were built on my sleepless nights. Then came the promotion. The firm was opening a new division, one that could define the future of our careers. I'd put everything into that project, mapping every detail, preparing every pitch, crafting a vision that impressed even the hardest critics. It was my chance. My moment. And that's when Rachel made her move. She stole my entire presentation. Word for word. Slide for slide. Idea for idea. She walked into that boardroom with the confidence of a queen, delivering what I had spent months perfecting. By the time I realized what had happened, it was too late. The executives were already applauding her. The promotion was hers. I'll never forget the way she looked at me that day, smug, victorious, as though I'd never mattered at all. It wasn't just betrayal. It was annihilation. She took the future I had bled for and claimed it as her own. And while everyone congratulated her, I stood in the back, invisible. Forgotten. But here's the part Rachel never understood: shadows don't vanish just because you ignore them. They linger. They grow. And sooner or later, they consume the light. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe Rachel hadn't meant to steal my work. Maybe it was some kind of mistake, a crossed wire, a misunderstanding. That's what I wanted to believe. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Shadows were beginning to stretch across our friendship, and the light I once saw in her was fading fast. The warning signs came quietly, like whispers I tried to ignore. Suddenly, Rachel was too busy for our usual coffee breaks. She brushed off my calls, avoided eye contact in meetings, and when she did speak to me, her words carried a sharpness that hadn't been there before. Once, she'd been my confidant, the one I could vent to about office politics, about life, about anything. Now, it felt like every secret I'd ever shared was a weapon she could turn against me. It started small. I'd overhear colleagues repeating phrases I knew I had only ever said to her. My late-night project notes appeared in her reports, written in my exact phrasing. At first, I wondered if I was just paranoid. But then came the favoritism. The bosses couldn't get enough of her. Every time she opened her mouth, they nodded like she was the wisest person in the room. Every time I contributed, it was as if my voice barely existed. And the strangest part? Rachel always seemed to know exactly what the executives wanted to hear, sometimes before they even said it. That's when the lies began. One morning, a colleague congratulated me on approving a new campaign draft. But I hadn't even seen it. Rachel had signed off in my name. Another time, she told the team I'd missed a deadline that, in reality, I had finished days before. Each incident left me looking incompetent, unreliable. The careful reputation I had built was unraveling thread by thread, while hers only grew brighter. I tried to confront her once, half joking, half desperate. I asked, "Did you really tell Mark that I forgot the budget numbers?" She just smiled, wide and cold, and said, "Elena, you know how forgetful you can be." Forgetful? Me? The one who never missed a detail? That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the shadows on my wall flickering with every passing car. My chest ached with something I couldn't name: anger, betrayal, fear. It was as if I was watching myself slowly disappear, being replaced by the version of me Rachel painted for everyone else. And then came the moment that silenced all doubt. I returned to the office late one evening, planning to grab a folder I'd left behind. The building was nearly empty, the halls quiet. But from down the corridor, I heard Rachel's voice. She was in the conference room, laughing softly with one of the executives. I leaned closer, just enough to catch her words. "She'll never see it coming." My blood froze. Whatever game Rachel was playing, I realized then, I was no longer just losing credit. I was being erased. "She'll never see it coming." Those words echoed in my head for days, haunting me in every quiet moment. I tried to brush them off as office banter, but something inside me knew better. Rachel was plotting something bigger, something final. And then it happened. The quarterly board presentation was the most important event of the year, the kind of stage that could launch a career, or end one. I had spent weeks crafting the proposal, a groundbreaking campaign designed to bring in millions. Every chart, every figure, every visual was mine. I guarded it like treasure, double-checking files, locking my office, keeping backups. This was supposed to be my redemption, my chance to step back into the light. But when the day arrived, I walked into the boardroom and felt my stomach drop. On the massive screen, Rachel's name was plastered across the title slide of my presentation. Not mine. Hers. And as she began to speak, I realized it wasn't just a stolen pitch this time, it was my entire body of work. Word for word. Image for image. She had gutted my project and rebuilt it under her name, with not a single trace of me left behind. The executives hung on her every word, impressed, nodding, whispering about her brilliance. Applause thundered through the room as she finished. And me? I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. When the CEO stood to announce Rachel as the new director of the division, a position I had bled for, my vision blurred. Director. The very title I had dreamed of. Gone. Handed to her on a silver platter, wrapped in the skin of my sacrifice. It wasn't just professional theft. It was personal obliteration. With that single act, Rachel had stolen not just my future, but my identity. And she knew exactly what she had done. When the meeting ended, she brushed past me, her perfume sharp and sweet, her whisper colder than ice. "Don't look so shocked, Elena. You were never meant for the spotlight. You're the shadow, remember?" The words cut deeper than any knife. I stumbled out of the building like a ghost, my body numb, my mind screaming. Anger burned in my veins, clashing with heartbreak until I could barely breathe. I replayed every late night we'd spent together, every secret I had trusted her with, every smile I thought was genuine. All of it, lies. She had never been my sister. She had been sharpening her blade all along. That night, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by torn pages of my notes, the evidence of everything she had taken. My hands shook as I held the last draft of my campaign, the one she had paraded as her own. My career. My trust. My life. Gone. But as the tears finally stopped, something else rose in their place. Silence. A silence so sharp it felt like the calm before a storm. Because Rachel thought she had destroyed me. But she had no idea what kind of shadow she had just created. 4 days after the promotion, I lived like a ghost. I dragged myself through the office halls, invisible to everyone but the whispers. Rachel was the star now, the youngest division director in the firm's history. Her face was splashed across industry magazines, her name praised on social media. And me? I was just the footnote in her story. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. My apartment became a graveyard of empty coffee cups and crumpled papers, reminders of the life I'd built and lost. At night, I'd sit in the dark replaying her words, "You're the shadow." At first, I believed her. Maybe I really was destined to stay behind the scenes, forgotten, used, discarded. Maybe she was right. But then came the trigger, the moment that changed everything. It was a Friday evening when I returned to the office to clear out my desk. I couldn't stand being there anymore, surrounded by the stench of betrayal. The building was mostly empty, but as I passed Rachel's new office, I heard laughter spilling out. My curiosity pulled me closer. The door was slightly open. Inside, Rachel sat with one of the senior partners, glass of wine in hand. On her screen was my original draft, the one she'd stolen. Except this version still had my name written in the file header. The partner pointed at it and asked, "Elena Carter? Who's that?" Rachel laughed, the kind of laugh that made my skin crawl. "Oh, just an assistant who helped with research." She couldn't keep up. I had to step in and save the project. Assistant. Couldn't keep up. Saved by her. I felt my stomach twist, my blood ignite. It wasn't enough that she had stolen my work, she was rewriting history, erasing me entirely. I stumbled back from the door, shaking. But this time, the tears didn't come. Instead, something inside me hardened. The grief, the despair, the self-doubt, it all burned away, leaving only steel in its place. Rachel had destroyed my career. She had humiliated me, betrayed me, buried me alive. But she had made one fatal mistake. She thought shadows were weak. I walked out of that office with my head high for the first time in weeks. The night air was cool against my face, and for the first time, I could breathe. I saw it clearly, every secret Rachel had ever told me, every careless mistake she had hidden, every skeleton she thought was safe in the dark. I knew them all. And now, I would use them. No more sleepless nights. No more silent suffering. Rachel had stolen my spotlight, but I was about to show her what happens when the shadow fights back. That night, as I sat at my desk, I opened a blank page and typed one word at the top. Planned. I started small. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about striking fast, it was about striking right. If Rachel wanted the spotlight, I would use it to burn her alive. Step 1. Proof. For weeks, I gathered every scrap of evidence I could find. Old emails where I had sent her drafts, notes in my handwriting, time-stamped files that predated her work. I dug through company servers late at night, backing up documents onto encrypted drives. Every click felt like sharpening a blade. Step 2. Allies. Rachel thought she had charmed everyone, but charm fades when people notice the cracks. I began with Julia, a junior associate she constantly belittled in front of clients. Then Mark, who had once lost credit for his numbers mysteriously misplaced in a report Rachel submitted. Quiet conversations over coffee turned into confessions, and soon I had a small but loyal circle of people who had also been burned by her. Each one handed me their own pieces of evidence, stories that painted a pattern. Rachel didn't rise because of brilliance, she climbed by stepping on others. Step 3. The trap. I created a portfolio, an entire archive of Rachel's thefts. Side-by-side comparisons of my original drafts with her finished work. Witness statements from colleagues. Screenshots of her lies. Even recordings from late-night conversations where she bragged about manipulating the bosses. Piece by piece, the truth came together into something undeniable. Step 4. Exposure. Timing was everything. The company's annual shareholders' gala was only a month away, a glittering event where Rachel was set to present as the face of innovation. Cameras, executives, investors, the perfect stage. If she wanted glory, I would give her an audience. But I didn't stop there. Quietly, I began leaking hints of her corruption to industry contacts, whispers that spread like smoke before a fire. Anonymous emails, cryptic files, subtle breadcrumbs leading back to her. By the time she took that stage, the world would already be waiting for cracks to appear. And through it all, Rachel remained blissfully unaware. She strutted through the office in her designer heels, barking orders, flashing her smile, believing she was untouchable. She still looked at me as though I were nothing more than a ghost trailing behind her. Good. That was exactly what I wanted. Because shadows are invisible, until they decide to reveal themselves. On the night before the gala, I sat at my desk staring at the folder labeled Rachel Carter, Truth. My heart pounded, adrenaline buzzing through my veins. Months of humiliation, despair, and anger had brought me here. Tomorrow, the stage would be hers. But when the lights came on, the spotlight wouldn't reveal her brilliance. It would expose her destruction. The gala glittered like a promise of forever, the chandeliers raining light over the crowd, cameras aimed like hungry birds. Rachel stood at the center, flawless in a silver dress, the room bending toward her every word. She smiled, radiant and untouchable, and for a moment I felt the old hollow ache in my chest. Then the music changed, and so did everything. I sat in the back row, my allies at my side. Julia's hand squeezed mine. Mark's jaw was clenched. We had rehearsed this in whispers and midnight emails, but nothing could have prepared me for the electricity that crackled through the room when the first slide hit the screen. At first it looked like a routine presentation, graphs, glossy mock-ups, applause lines. Then, right where Rachel expected her applause, the screen split. On the left, her masterpiece. On the right, my original files, timestamped, annotated, the fingerprints of every sleepless night. Side by side, there was no hiding. The applause turned to puzzled murmurs. I let the footage play. A voice recording, Rachel laughing as she boasted to a friend about how easy it was to take credit, filled the room. The cameras hungrily captured every face as people leaned forward, jaws dropping. Then came the emails, the screenshots, the HR forms she thought she'd shredded. Each file landed like a hammer blow. For months, she took more than ideas, I said, my voice cutting through the hum. I watched Rachel's face change, color draining as her smile fractured. She erased careers. She lied under oath. She falsified approvals. I'd arranged it so the legal team I'd quietly tipped off months ago were in the audience. They rose, calm and efficient. A hush fell as they announced an internal investigation had turned into a criminal referral, fraud, misappropriation, falsification of documents. The word fraud echoed like a verdict. Rachel's world unraveled in real time. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, texts, calls, emails, each one a tiny nail in the coffin she'd built for herself. Investors who'd smiled at her a moment before now whispered about damages and restitution. Her sponsor stood, face pale, and mouthed that they were cutting ties. Reporters pushed forward, lenses snapping like thunder. She tried to speak, to charm, to deny. But her words fell flat against the avalanche of proof. One by one, colleagues I'd once thought loyal stepped away, their faces a portrait of betrayal. The roar of the crowd became a tide, pulling away the shore of her lies. By the time the security team, quiet, professional, escorted her from the stage, her designer heels clacked like a metronome counting the seconds of her undoing. Her eyes found mine for a single, raw second, no smile, no excuse, only the hollow stare of someone who finally understood the scale of what they'd lost. Outside, cameras followed her into the night as lawyers and executives closed ranks behind me. The firm issued statements. Investors demanded audits. Rachel's empire, built on stolen shadows, began to collapse. I stepped into the cooling air and let it wash over me. The lights of the gala faded behind me, but I no longer wanted the spotlight. I wanted the truth to stand where she once stood. She tried to destroy me. Tonight she learned what happens when a shadow decides to stand. The aftermath came quickly, like a storm sweeping away everything Rachel had built. Within days, headlines screamed her downfall. Rising star exposed as fraud. Director faces legal action over stolen work. Sponsors pulled funding, her contracts collapsed, and her carefully polished image shattered into shards too sharp to piece back together. The law didn't take long to catch up. With the files, recordings, and testimonies I had gathered, the case against her was airtight. Fraud. Embezzlement. Intellectual theft. The woman who once strutted through the office like she owned the world was now facing charges that could strip her of everything: her career, her wealth, her freedom. And me? For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. The executives offered me the director position Rachel had stolen, but I surprised them all. I turned it down. I didn't need her title to prove my worth. I was more than the spotlight she had stolen. Instead, I started my own firm with Julia and Mark, the very people she had trampled. We built something real, something honest, and soon enough clients who once flocked to her came knocking at our door. Rachel, meanwhile, couldn't escape the shadow of her own disgrace. Every interview request, every article, every whisper carried my name alongside hers. She had tried to erase me, but in the end, she ensured I would be remembered as the one who exposed her. It was poetic, really. She tried to live in the light by stealing it from me, but now she was trapped in darkness, while I thrived in the shadow she had feared so much. One night, months later, I walked past her old office building. Her nameplate was gone, the glass door empty, a hollow echo of the empire she'd once commanded. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the look in her eyes when she whispered, "You're the shadow." And I smiled. Because she was right. I am the shadow. And shadows don't disappear. They grow. They follow. They consume. In the end, Rachel Carter will spend the rest of her life living beneath mine. She tried to destroy me. Now, she lives in my shadow. And now I want to ask you, the viewers, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, someone who tried to erase you, just like Rachel did to Elena? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below, because your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear today. And if you want more stories of betrayal, revenge, and poetic justice, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the shadows always have more secrets to tell.